Good morning. This is to hear the floor, and this is for translation. When Minister wants to speak, he will speak Spanish. So just place this in your ear. Perfect. And then this is in, on and off, on and off. Hear me? So when you don't want to hear me, just click off. You click me off. Exactly. When he speaks Spanish, you click on, and it is no. You can put it in your vest. Your vest has pocket, or even your jacket. Only when you remove it, take care because the belt is like touchy sticks. Yeah. Okay. Put it in some area. Pero es bueno.
Grabada, decía, así bien,
Ahí
bien,
está.
todo sin publicidad. Dice muy serio. Make America great again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ICA Pavilion, the home of sustainable agriculture of the Americas. My name is Danny Nierenberg. I am president and co-founder of Food Tank. Delighted to be with all of you. I want to thank the ICA Pavilion, especially Lloyd Day and Margaret Ziegler. And I want to wish you all a happy Food and Agriculture Day. Please give that a round of applause, everyone. We have a really wonderful conversation planned, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. We have Roland Royer, the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries, and Blue and Green Economy of Dominica. Please give him a round of applause. Bigger round of applause, everyone. Keep your energy up. We have Fernando Matos, the Minister of Livestock, Agriculture, and Fisheries for Uruguay, and the Chair of the Inter-American Board of Agriculture. Please give him a round of applause. And we have my good friend Lloyd Day, the Deputy Director General of ICA. Please give him a round of applause. So there's been a lot going on at COP over the last few days, and I want to start with you, Minister Royer. I'm wondering if you can sort of give us an overview about how the climate crisis is affecting farmers in Dominica and other small island developing states. What are farmers experiencing in Dominica right now? You should have.
Thank you and good morning all. Dominica is challenged by climate change and the Caribbean in general is very impacted by climate change because we are situated in line of the tropical cyclones
Right.
that visit us every year. So every
Sure.
year we have what we call a hurricane season, which runs between June to November, December every year. So 6 months we are very highly vulnerable for attack by
Right.
any storms. In 2017, Dominica was affected by Hurricane Maria, and we suffered damage and losses up to 226% of GDP. And 2 years before that, in 2015, we were also struck by Tropical Storm Erica, and we suffered damage and losses mounting to 90% of our GDP as well. Just this year, in 2024, we had Hurricane Beryl that passed through the Caribbean, affecting countries like Jamaica, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Grenada, and that mounted to damages up to over $425 million.
Right.
You know, so you can see how vulnerable we are in terms of climate change. And as was discussed by scientists, all this was fueled, the hurricanes were fueled by, you know, the change in global temperatures that make them more frequent and stronger, and more virulent. You know, so because of that, our food security is really under threat in the region, because every year we suffer from the brunt of hurricanes. You know, so we can say, because of our location and the frequent visits from storms and hurricane, our food security is affected by climate change.
Right.
In addition to that, with climate variabilities, we experience longer dry seasons, which affects production.
Right.
Sometimes we have prolonged rains and longer wet season that also affects production as well. And due to the change in the weather patterns, we see a proliferation of pests and disease, you know, which affects our crops. You know, so all these challenges really discourages farmers to invest and to remain on the farm.
Right.
You know, so we've seen farmers moving out from the farms. That's one. And of course, affecting farm labor as well. You know, so in summary, climate change has impacted us tremendously in the Caribbean region because of what I mentioned earlier.
And Minister Royer, many of us often think of the Caribbean as a tourist destination, but it's very important economically for farmers, as you pointed out. Can you talk about some of the crops that Dominica produces and how they are most affected by climate change?
Yes, we do a lot of tree crops. We do plantains, bananas. All these crops are what we call in local languages above ground crops. So wind can have them destroyed very, very easily. We also do quite a bit of root crops. That add a bit of resilience to our farming system because they are on the ground if you're struck by weather patterns. But even with the crops, the tree crops and the bananas, plantains, we have experienced pests and diseases in recent time, you know, that have really causing damages and losses, you know, to the farmers.
Right.
For example, for bananas, we have black secatoka, and based on the climatic condition and environmental patterns, we see a proliferation of that pest.
Right.
We have the TR4, which is on the borders. Anytime it could be in the Caribbean. For citrus, we saw the citrus greening disease, the tristeza virus. You know, all this, you know, came to the region over the past 15 years.
Right,
you know,
right.
And we really suffer from that. So it's not only wind or droughts or too much rainfall, but also pest and diseases.
Yeah, you're getting attacked on multiple fronts.
On multiple fronts.
Because of the climate crisis. Thank you for outlining all of that. It's really helpful. Minister Matos, we spoke yesterday, and I'm wondering if you can talk about trends that you have seen at recent climate change conferences that sort of address what Minister Royer is talking about, this increasing level of attack over the last decade and a half from the climate crisis on farmers.
Bueno, muy buenos días y nuevamente el agradecimiento al ICA por esta oportunidad, compartir con otros ministros las experiencias. Estamos en Latinoamérica, pero manejamos situaciones distintas, climas distintos, regiones agroecológicas diferentes y riesgos diferentes, pero en general todos estamos en una situación de incremento de la vulnerabilidad y sometidos a mayor riesgo climático. En nuestro caso hemos tenido una secuencia en los últimos años de las sequías más importantes que hemos tenido en los últimos tiempos, con fuerte impacto en los aspectos vinculados a la economía y a la producción. Y también en este proceso también hemos tenido la contracara de inundaciones que vinieron después de los periodos de sequía. Entonces ese contraste de fenómenos climáticos absolutamente opuestos, pero que son extremos, determinan una situación delicada desde el punto de vista de los apoyos que requieren los productores para su recuperación. Es decir, en el caso de Uruguay, la economía está muy vinculada a la suerte de la agropecuaria. Entonces, cualquier ciudadano, aunque esté alejado absolutamente de la actividad, pero en función de la importancia de la exportación, nosotros somos un país de baja población y tenemos gran producción, producimos para 10, 15 veces más del volumen de nuestra población. Entonces no hay un problema de seguridad alimentaria implícito, pero sí hay una afectación de la pauta exportadora y de la generación de divisas, lo que termina afectando los números de la macroeconomía.
Right. Thank you, Minister Matos. So, Minister Royer, you and Minister Matos have talked both about sort of the incremental change of the climate crisis and then the extreme weather events that are happening. And I'm wondering, as a farmer yourself, can you talk about this experience sort of personally, how the climate crisis in Dominica is affecting your own farm?
Yes, I was one of the farmers who suffered losses after Hurricane Maria. Actually, estimates on crop damage was about $54,000 because I did a lot of plantains and root crops, etc. So as a farmer, it really discouraged me for reinvesting in farms because one thing I don't have, and many farmers don't have as well, is farm insurance.
Right.
And that's one of the systems we're trying to put in place as we speak, at the ministry in Dominica. Before, when we did bananas, we had what we call the rain crop system,
Right.
where we had insurance for farmers, but they would pay that on the sales. So if we were struck by any disaster, the banana corporation would compensate them. And
Right.
they will be able to get back quickly on
Right.
their feet
Right.
to invest on the farms. So me having no insurance
Right.
and farmers like me,
Yeah.
it really, discourages us from reinvesting in the farm. So we have to went on the government system, to get external funding to assist us to compensate crop damage and to provide grants,
Right.
to invest in the farm.
Right.
So if you don't have that kind of level of safety net or protection, it discourages you, to invest.
Yeah.
So I diversified into other business after that because it's discouraged. But
Right.
being a person who loved the farm, eventually I got back into it.
Right.
But building resilience, in doing so.
Yeah, and if someone like you is affected by the climate crisis, I mean, that says a lot, so that many other small farmers are more and more affected every day.
And what happened is that the farmers, they lost the markets.
Right.
Because Dominica is one of the islands in Eastern Caribbean that exports a lot of fresh produce to the different islands like St. Martin, Antigua, Montserrat, Barbados.
Yeah.
And seeing that they were down for a while, other islands, the bigger islands in the region, and even in the Americans, really capitalized and went into the market. So by the time we were back on our feet, we lost our market share.
Right.
And we had to, try to increase production and increase our standards to become competitive. So it was very difficult to get back into the market space.
Right.
But as resilient as we are in Dominica, eventually, we got there.
You are very resilient folks, for sure. Lloyd, as you're listening to all this, and as Deputy Director General of ECA, what are your thoughts on how the climate crisis is affecting all of the Americas? What else are we seeing?
Well, we see the issue of flood and drought and heat and cold and freeze affecting all of our countries from Canada down to Uruguay. I won't say Argentina because they're not here, so I'll end in Uruguay. Just I think it was last year, Minister, I was visiting you, and there was a water deficit in Montevideo, Uruguay, which never has that problem. There's always water in Uruguay. And so even in countries where there's always water, sometimes now, because of changing climate conditions, there is a potential of not having that. So from the perspective of ECA, we look at a variety of areas and where we hope we can work with our ministers under their leadership to drive policies, capacity building, interventions in which we can help them. And part of that is being here at the COP and trying to raise the voice, not just of agriculture in general and food systems, but of particular ministers of agriculture who have to deal with their farmers on a daily basis and all the problems that they face. And some of it can be from weather, others can be from pests, others can be from barriers and regulations that are placed upon them and costs to deal with all of that, in which there's no compensation. The average person thinks their food comes from a supermarket.
Right.
And as a lot of people have spoken during the last 2 weeks, consumers have never cared more about their food nor known less. And so we think it's really important that agriculture has a face here
Yeah.
at the COP. There's other ag pavilions here, but a lot of them are more focused on kind of the narrative that agriculture is the problem.
Sure.
We're here to say that agriculture is part of the solution.
Absolutely.
We can sequester carbon, we can reduce emissions, and by the way, while we're doing that, we're providing food, we're providing feed, we're producing fiber, and many other elements of the bioeconomy. And so our goal here, working with the ministers, and I thank Minister Royer and Minister Matos for being here, Minister Mai the week before, to talk about the experience of a Minister of Agriculture, and so that people around here know it, and thanks to you for helping share that with your community so that people don't think that food just comes from a supermarket, but it comes from men and women and children who are working hard to take care of their land and to try to survive.
Absolutely. Lloyd, I feel like the job of a Minister of Agriculture has changed dramatically over the last 2 decades. This is a very intense job right now because of the climate crisis. Do you want to speak to that a little bit from what the ministers that you work with?
You know, you say that, but I feel it as being very much the same. I remember when I was a few years ago, maybe a few decades ago, I was traveling to Asia with the governor of California, and we had as part of our delegation the Secretary of Agriculture of California. She couldn't come with us. Why? Because there was a flood.
Wow.
And the flood was impacting agriculture, and so it was impacting their ability to produce food, and she had to stay behind. But we still were there, and we still, opened up markets in China based on a quarantine they had against wheat in California because of Carnal Bunt.
Yeah.
So the issues really remain the same. It's just the noise around agriculture, I think, is getting more and more intense because of the issue of climate change.
Sure.
And people pointing the fingers at farmers and at agriculture as being the problem when we're really part of the solution. And that's why we're here.
Absolutely. We have to stop blaming farmers and agriculture for these problems. Minister Royer and Minister Matos, I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the strategies that the farmers in your countries are employing to sort of battle against the climate crisis.
Yes, it's multifaceted. For example, seeing that we can't grow open field vegetables effectively as before because of the climatic variabilities, they're shifting from open field agriculture to sheltered agriculture, hydroponics, greenhouses. But the issue with this, it's very expensive. It's onerous for the farmers. Before the farmers would go out in the open field and plant during the rainy season, because in the Caribbean we have wet and dry season, so we had seasonal agriculture. But with climate change, even that season now is kind of erratic. You're not too sure when it's dry, and you're not too sure when it's wet. So to control the environment for the crops, they had to go shelter. And so the investment for that is very huge.
Right.
Imagine one shade house costs a farmer around $16,000.
Yeah.
Where he's getting this up front. So most time the government have to step in to assist him in doing that. In terms of irrigation, to battle the dry periods, we have to invest in irrigation infrastructure, both macro and micro. Areas where we have large expanse of government lands or communal lands, we go macro. Areas where we have small farmers with holding, we assist them with water pumps and the drip lines, so they can provide that well-needed water to the plants.
Sure.
So these are some of the strategies that we're employing now to battle the impacts. And as a government itself, we're trying to introduce varieties that are more tolerant and resistant to drought and if certain pests and disease. So we are engaged in doing that.
Absolutely. So you talked about hydroponics and, sort of the investment and the cost of that. But there's also a sort of a cultural shift that has to happen among farmers. And I can imagine that there's both sort of positive and negatives of that. Like maybe young farmers are more interested in hydroponics, but they're also losing some of that tie to the land that they had before.
Yeah, well, the young farmers, we're trying our best to have them gain interest in that. But because of the issues and challenges we faced, some of them are kind of reluctant to enter into agriculture because they're seeing what is happening to the older ones. The average age of a farmer in the region is around 65 years.
Yeah. And
we have a strong young farmers program, trying to convince them that, we need your assistance in terms of ensuring that we have food security in the future. But investment, again, is still steep, as a new entrance, into the agricultural production system.
Right.
So that's one of the strategies, and we're working with them to see how we can assist them and support them to invest. Because as Ryder said, the cultural shift will be difficult for the older ones, but we must get the younger ones to really adopt the technologies, so that we can make a difference in the production.
Thank you so much. Minister Matos, what are some of the ways ranchers especially are changing practices to adapt to the climate crisis?
Bueno, diríamos que en Uruguay los grandes riesgos que afectan más a la producción es la sequía, la falta de agua. En un país que llueve, pero con una lluvia muy mal distribuida, irregularmente distribuida, y por lo tanto el recurso que más queremos estimular y apoyar es la disponibilidad de sistemas de riego y acumulación de agua. El país tiene una topografía que es favorable, el promedio de lluvia es en torno de 1.200, 1.300 milímetros por año, es un buen régimen de precipitaciones, pero lógicamente que las tecnologías para acumular agua, para tener disponible para riego, son también variadas. Como hablamos antes, es evidente que los pequeños productores siempre son los más afectados por los sistemas de afectación de sequía. Y por lo tanto esos productores tienen que tener algún tipo de apoyo de planes estatales o de sistemas de cooperación que los puedan apoyar de mejor manera. En el caso de la ganadería, lo que más se ha invertido básicamente son fuentes de agua y sistemas de pastoreo intensivo con agua en la parcela, con lo que tenemos ahí explotar las fuentes de agua, que por suerte Uruguay tiene riqueza, pero como bien dijo Lloyd, algo que nunca ocurrió en 400 años, un día ocurrió. Quiere decir, la zona metropolitana de Montevideo prácticamente se quedó sin agua y fue una de las grandes crisis que tuvo que enfrentar el gobierno. De todas maneras, tiene fuentes de agua importantes, tiene acuíferos, tiene todo el río Uruguay que bordea la frontera con Argentina, que es una fuente de agua dulce inagotable, parte del río de la Plata, tiene distintos sistemas que pueden aprovecharse y también tiene una red hidrológica que es muy potente. Lógicamente que todos estos sistemas requieren de políticas públicas de financiamiento, de apoyo de infraestructura de eléctrica, que muchas veces requiere sistemas de bombeo o de aspersión. Ha habido a través del gobierno la inversión promovida, que es una forma de estimular con incentivos fiscales la inversión productiva, justamente con una mirada de puntaje en función de la parcela de crédito fiscal que se le otorga a través de un premio de los proyectos que generan más empleo, que generan en distintas regiones del país que son más interesantes de promover en función del nivel de desarrollo humano que tienen esas comunidades, un porcentaje de apoyo mayor. Y después instrumentos que tenemos que desarrollar más, como los temas de seguro. Creo que el seguro es el otro instrumento que debemos desarrollar más como forma de proteger a los productores de los embates de los fenómenos climáticos, que no son solamente afectaciones directas a la producción, pero también vienen asociadas con enfermedades, con plagas y con malezas, para lo cual también tenemos que hacer un trabajo a través de la investigación para que justamente las especies que se plantan o las variedades de plantas que se puedan desarrollar, sea bajo sistemas de riego o sea con sistemas de resistencia a enfermedades, implican que el cuidado del recurso también tiene que estar dentro de la misma estrategia, porque de esta manera no presionamos tanto los recursos naturales. Entonces aquí hay claramente una importancia del desarrollo de estas tecnologías, porque como dije anteriormente, cuando no hay cosecha, no trabajan las ciudades, no trabaja el transporte, no trabaja el derrame en la economía, no ocurre, y directamente nos impacta en el Producto Interno Bruto. Entonces hasta el ciudadano que está cada vez más alejado del agropecuario va a sufrir las consecuencias de un fenómeno climático que lamentablemente ocurre con mayor frecuencia en este momento.
Right. Lloyd, I saw you nodding when Minister Matos was talking about the need for agricultural insurance and insurance programs. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how ICA helps the countries of the Americas sort of learn more about the sort of remedies that are needed and how to implement them.
this is really an area where we have to develop new programming. You know, the policy framework for agriculture and support and subsidies is moving in wealthy countries toward more risk management and crop insurance and disaster relief.
Sure.
We need to help that happen in developing countries, in a medium-sized country, because right now the financing doesn't exist, the mechanisms for most farmers to have insurance doesn't exist, and so everything's disaster relief, and even that is pretty weak.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why we've developed this resilience fund, in order to help, cope in an expeditious way with any kind of disasters, but also use blended finance and other tools to help with the construction, as both ministers have been saying, about new technologies and tools that will help farmers grow more with less. To use the benefits of digital technology, of AI, of life sciences, in order to implement and put on the ground the types of innovations that are going to help us produce for a changing climate. But part of that has to be risk management. And how do we help policies or governments achieve the kind of policies and financial structure that will help them get there? And then here at the COP, this is the finance COP. How much of the finance COP is talking about food and agriculture?
Right.
I'll bet it's minuscule. And so we need to be here, and we need to shake this place up and say, you need to focus on food and agriculture. You need to focus on the small farmer, not just the big farmer.
Right.
The big farmer needs help too, but the small farmer, which is the bulk of farmers around the world, needs help with financing, needs help with the ability to manage their risk, and needs help with disaster relief, because in this climate, crisis that we're suffering, and it's going to get worse as time goes on, we need to find ways to become more resilient. And the financing's not coming to them.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for that, please. Minister Matos.
Tomando el argumento de Lloyd, cuando hablamos de sostenibilidad, la sostenibilidad es no solo la ambiental, que muchas veces uno se refiere, pero es económica y social. Un productor, especialmente el pequeño productor, que tiene que enfrentar una sucesión de fenómenos adversos climáticos, termina muchas veces tomando la opción de dejar la tierra. Y eso es un impacto social de enorme dimensión, porque es un gran capital y un patrimonio social de enorme importancia la gente vinculada a la tierra y su permanencia allí. De lo contrario, lo que tenemos es un proceso de abandono, de migración, donde estaremos afectando el día de mañana la seguridad alimentaria sin ninguna duda, pero además generamos un problema social, porque el abandono de la tierra es la migración, pero la migración también implica la pérdida de identidad nacional, de valores culturales, de valores sociales, de sistemas productivos que son tradicionales de la producción. Entonces, como decíamos, tenemos que defender a toda la producción. Pero hay una producción que se radica en la tierra que tenemos que darle mucho más atención. Porque si no, el efecto de la concentración, la propia crisis climática va a generar un efecto concentrador de la tierra y de los sistemas de producción, que se vienen dando naturalmente aún sin crisis climática en muchos países, por un tema de escala, por un tema de eficiencia. Y eso es un tema que nos tiene que preocupar como sociedad. Entonces el mercado solamente no resuelve las cosas. Tiene que haber un equilibrio entre las leyes del mercado y también el apoyo social de un Estado que tiene que ser participante y estar atento a estos movimientos, porque no es solo economía, no es solo ambiente, también es un aspecto de defender la malla social, donde los pequeños productores tienen un rol importante para proporcionar a la convivencia entre los países.
Thank you, Minister Matos. So, Minister Royer, I imagine that you have similar feelings to Minister Matos, that the market can't solve everything. We also need those social and economic safety nets for farmers, especially small farmers, to survive.
Yes, thank you for that. And the situation is even, I would say, it's a little more difficult for us in Dominica.
Sure.
Because what we normally say, we are net zero. So we do not contribute to climate change in any way.
Right.
But yet, we are the one most impacted, being damaged by hurricanes and storms and floods every single year.
Sure.
And we are not being compensated for that. We are not being supported to rebuild the livelihoods of the farmers. If we do so, most time our government take loans to do that, or will divert funds from a project or from some other sector to assist the farmers. So for us in the region, that's very difficult to digest.
So you need that loss and damage
Yes,
fund.
so what we're saying, in the loss and damage fund, I think it's $700 million which has been placed thus far. We need something specific to food security. We need to focus on other areas, but food security, we think it's fundamental, and we need something, our envelope looking at food security in terms of loss and damage, because Dominica is a case study for the entire world to look at.
Right,
and
right.
it's difficult for us as ministers and government to find resources every hurricane season.
Right, every year, every 6 months, literally.
And what's more hurtful, that we are net zero. We are not contributing. So the persons that are contributing to climate change need to step up and provide the resources so that we can.
Say that again.
The persons that are contributing to climate change need to step up and commit to the pledges and assist the vulnerable farmers in the small island developing states to bounce back after these disasters.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because again, Dominica is net zero. You are not contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions in the way that rich countries are. You need that support from others.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Minister. Lloyd, I wonder from your perspective, having been here now for almost 2 weeks, what you want to come out of COP29 in terms of, raising the voices again of farmers and agricultural ministers, but also of real tangible, actions that will come out on the road to Brazil.
It's only been 2 weeks, right?
Almost.
And you'd think I'd be sleeping by now, but I'm not. You get home, you barely sleep, and then you prepare for the next day. I think, first of all, let's see what happens in terms of finance. I think if there's some commitment to finance, exactly as the minister said, to take care of these countries as they are suffering all these impacts from climate change, that'll be a positive step. I doubt we'll see it. We never really do. I think coming from this, I think as we go to Brazil, which ought to be the Ag COP, and it ought to look at all the innovations and all the technologies and all the things we're doing to make Brazil, but the rest of the Americas and the rest of the world more climate friendly in agriculture. We need to raise our voices to say we need finance for this sector. We need a global commitment in order to fund all sizes of farmers in order to get to where we need to get and to demonstrate that we're part of the solution. We are part of the solution, but people don't know it.
Right.
And we need to have some kind of communication strategy that's global and that's done by governments, that's done by NGOs that are pretty good at attacking us, to talk about all the benefits that agriculture of all types do, from fruits and vegetables to grains to pasture to livestock.
Right.
And tell the truth about agriculture. It's not hard. We started coming here years ago, and I think our real success at the time was just having ministers of agriculture meet with ministers of the environment, and then they'd agree to another meeting. That ain't enough.
Right.
We need to focus on getting those ministers of environment to say agriculture is a critical component of our environment, and we need to put financing there to help them to achieve their goals, to feed the world, but also to reduce their emissions. And we can do it.
Yeah.
We just need the energy and the motivation to do it, and the leadership of these gentlemen next to me.
And you have excellent leadership on stage. So Minister Matos and Mr. Warrior, given what Lloyd has said, what is your call to action for everyone here at this COP before the Brazil and COP30 happen?
Bueno, yo creo que va a haber un cambio importante en el enfoque hacia la próxima COP, porque lo va a organizar un país que tiene mucho más próximo el aspecto agropecuario, que tiene también una diversidad de sistemas productivos, que tiene una variabilidad de productores, tiene también pueblos originarios, indígenas. Entonces va a haber un mix de aspectos vinculados a la propia sociedad, que va a haber un enfoque seguramente diferente, y con el liderazgo de un país como Brasil, que es un gran productor agropecuario, un gran oferente, y que también tiene dentro de su propio país también importantes discusiones de cómo encarar la situación como un gran jugador de la oferta climática mundial. Yo creo que básicamente lo que tenemos que llevar adelante son que todas estas iniciativas que se han creado en las sucesivas COPs, y creo que hay un intento aquí de armonizar, armonía quiere decir armonizar las distintas iniciativas, para tratar de ir a la implementación definitiva y que todos los procesos tan lentos, burocráticos, que los recursos comprometidos puedan llegar a los destinatarios, puedan realmente ser efectivos para tomar las prácticas de adaptación o mitigación según el caso y según que cada país se enfoque. Yo creo que el ICA es una enorme oportunidad que tienen los donantes y las instituciones de financiamiento o los países que van a financiar para canalizar adecuadamente los recursos financieros para llegar a programas técnicos que lleguen realmente a los productores. Si estamos queriendo vincular, y eso también hay una voz de alerta, cuánto de los recursos, no solo que llegan lentamente, pero a la agricultura llega muy poco también. Entonces, si nosotros queremos asegurar hacia el futuro que la zona que es responsable por casi el 30% de la oferta del comercio mundial está en nuestra región, hay que poner el foco en esta región para la ayuda a estos pequeños productores y a estos sistemas productivos que están bajo amenaza de la variabilidad climática. Y por lo tanto, yo creo que aquí, para ser prácticos, los sistemas de financiamiento deben encontrar instituciones como el ICA, que conocen el territorio, que están físicamente posicionadas en cada uno de los países, que tienen proyectos, que conocen las autoridades, que conocen a los productores, a las organizaciones que son importantes para llegar al terreno y que esos recursos no se desvíen y que no sean canalizados, porque además hay condiciones de controlar de forma profesional el destino y la aplicación de estos proyectos, que es lo que normalmente se demora o es lo que lógicamente el donante desconfía de que no pueda llegar a un efectivo destino, como en el caso aquí. En todos los programas de ICA seguramente podremos llegar.
Sure, we need to make sure that those resources reach the people who need them, reach the small farmers who need them. Minister Royer, what's your call to action before COP30?
My call to action is very simple. We need to commit to the pledges for financing that have been made, COP after COP.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because as a small economy, we are the one that facing the brunt of the issues to actually sustain our production system. So that's my simple call. Let's commit to the pledges that have been made. And as an agricultural community, we need to place more focus on youth in agriculture.
Yes, yes.
Because with all the adaptation strategies that we are speaking about, the older ones, as you said, the cultural shift might be a bit difficult. So we need to place focus on youth in agriculture so that we can have a younger mind and, a longer future, to attain food security. Like for me, example, I am a beneficiary of ICA's Young Leaders in Agriculture. In 2010, I participated in a series of courses in Costa Rica, spearheaded by ICA. And during that period, you had a lot of the young agricultural professionals going through and maintaining and sustaining the sector. We've seen that not being continued.
Sure.
So my call to ICA, we need to reintroduce that program to have persons like me going through that and now policy head in my country leading agricultural systems, in Dominica.
Right.
So two calls. Commit to the financing and let's place more emphasis on youth in agriculture for a better future.
Two powerful points to end on. Please give these ministers a round of applause as well as Lloyd. Thank you all so much.